the Project Simple itself is innovative. Out of the box process that does everything without configuration and gives you maximum value for multi-team projects and multi-project teams. If you're in a mission, you can't be shy. You're going to have some successes. You're going to have some failures. We're still running late. We're not hitting our targets. We're, we don't have the budgets. Our budgets are shrinking. We need to do more with less. And yet they still expect to operate the same way. And their magical saving grace is AI. If we're spending 60% of our time maintaining the quality of the product to have a very level balance of bugs and tech debt items, and other teams are spending 90% of the time on features and only 10% to maintain the quality, what do you think happens to all those bugs and support cases and tech debt items?
Welcome. This is an Hour of Innovation podcast, and I'm your host, Vit Lyoshin. Alex Polyakov joins me today to discuss the evolution of his product, Project Simple, and the innovations that his team has built over the past year. We will also talk about challenges of growing a startup, strategies for attracting customers, and how AI and automation are shaping the future of product development. Welcome, Alex. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Vit, and congrats. Last time we talked, you were just starting out with your podcast, and now you're like, thousands of people have signed up and getting great traction. It's awesome. It's pretty amazing. I know I do my own podcast, but I'm nowhere near popular as you are now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been about 12 months since we talked last, and the podcast is like 13 months or something. Yeah, so it's been going well. All right, so let's start with Project Simple and what you guys built over the last year. I heard some new functionalities are out, so if you can give us a little bit overview of what's going on with the product.
Oh, wow. I don't really know where to begin. I guess the life of a startup is always unpredictable. So you learn from your users. You obviously have a vision, like I have my own. But over time, you start thinking about different aspects. And, our early focus was AI forecasting. That's how we started out with Project Simple. So we wanted to build a solution that helped predict when things will be done, especially in multi-team environments. Like a lot of people that want to apply, let's say, some kind of predictability only do that at one team level. But how does that work when you have a multi-team product? And you're trying to collate all the data from all of these teams, trying to figure out what you will be finishing up? Well, that's totally challenging. But we follow the pattern of product operating model. And I think over the past year, we've solidified that quite significantly. So you create your milestones and goals, you decompose them into assumptions, which are your features, map them with the epics, and then you can create the milestone, which is, the milestone is really just a date when you're expecting to get this done. And the AI kicks up and starts measuring every day, following, and it looks at a lot of data as far as the work remaining, how you are completing that work, but also everything else that is impacting your delivery, because cycle time is just not enough. That's a great assumption, Monte Carlo simulations, blah, blah, blah. We don't do any of that. We basically take a look at discovered work when somebody's working on something. Like, what's the percentage of discovered work on average from what we were originally anticipating? We take a look at the percentages of work that's allocated towards different type of backlog items. For example, how much strategic work are we doing versus tech debt versus support cases versus bugs? Our focus is we want to maintain a really, really good high quality product. So for that reason, bugs and support cases and tech debt are almost treated as much higher priority over anything else. And so where we end up, we've actually just did the analytics, and I'm always monitoring sprint analytics every sprint. And we see that, for example, only 30% of our work goes towards strategic stories. So the new things we build out. But when I compare that with all other product management teams, they try to spend 90. Well, good question. If most teams are spending, and I consider ourselves to be like a good average team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're spending 60% of our time maintaining the quality of the product to have a very leveled balance of bugs and tech debt items, and other teams are spending 90% of the time on features and only 10% to maintain the quality, what do you think happens to all those bugs and support cases and tech debt items? They keep on getting more, accruing higher and higher,
Right.
until one point when you're like, hey, we can't move, we're stuck. So what happens when teams are stuck? They kick off stabilization sprints, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, everybody forgets that for every 10 items fixed in your bug bash, you will create 3 new ones or discover 3 new ones. So it's a vicious cycle. Nobody ever gets done. And the only answer is you have to maintain the discipline of quality.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that we've discovered. We've been working this way, but now we have the data to back it up. So essentially, that's another data element that we feed the projection for the AI forecasting. We also take a look at support cases, the frequency they're occurring.
Mm-hmm.
We take a look at blockages, like if something gets blocked. So what's our block cycle time? We take a look at the frequency of blocking. And overall, we've just exploded out all of the metrics just basically by our unique development process. And the best part about that, all of the teams, and I'm running multiple teams, all of the teams have the same metrics. So I can actually gauge the same data because everyone follows the same process. It's just really easy to understand. Obviously, we don't compare the teams and their metrics because different teams have different disciplines, different people, but we look at the overall trending and how that actually impacts a single measurement, which is the calendar timeline. And that gets all fed. And then, AI crunches all these numbers, gives you some probabilistic things, and we craft all of that on the diagram. And it could be wrong. AI just gives you some calculations on the way
Mm-hmm.
it sees things. But what it does give us is an early indication that a failure or a risk has occurred. And we've been using this process and it works really well. So you might be 2 months out from your milestone and already know that there's no way that you're going to complete it. Now that's the time that is perfect if you're going to make an adjustment in the enterprise or even a medium-sized company. Because if you wait too long, then you're stuck and all of the options are eliminated, which are changing scope, extending timeline, or adding people. So we kind of perfected this over the past year. It looks really, really smooth. And the data analytics that we created they're really, really excellent. We know a lot more about how the teams actually work. And that's kind of exciting because I've become a big geek of, different metrics. It's good because everybody, what do most people take a look at? The DORA metrics and cycle time throughput or velocity if they're doing story points. These are not the metrics that you want to follow. These can be weaponized. They can be abused. There's behavioral things that we need to do to let the team work on its own, as opposed to try to fit into the expectation, especially if it's an unrealistic expectation. Because trust me, you've seen it in your job. If people are forced to have a certain way of reporting, and if they're expected to deliver a certain type of number, they will do everything possible to deliver that number, and that means they will hide the rest that doesn't fit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be, nobody wants to be recognized as underperformer or failing. I mean, we all do our job. We work hard, and we want to be respected for the good work we do. And if the expectations are unrealistic, and there's nobody standing up for the team, well, unfortunately, that's what you're going to end up with. So, sort of some companies have a tendency to shoot themselves in the foot. But that's what we've learned. It's one of the biggest capabilities that we've perfected. So it's been analytics primarily. It's been that type of AI forecasting. We've built out product backlog analytics, which is awesome. Everybody talks about no backlogs. Not going to happen. You need a backlog. You just need to figure out what should be on the team's plate and what shouldn't. And if you follow the correct backlog model, usually it's a centralized product backlog, and then work is distributed to team backlogs. So they have only what's they're currently working on. But you can continue as a PM to work on prioritizing things, working on epics, working on goals for the future, but don't distract the teams by giving them to them too early.
Right.
And so we've built out backlog analytics for anything that's old, which is good. So you can curate and easily clean up stuff. What else did we do? We did a lot of cleaning up, a lot of improvements in the UI UX. We're constantly investing into that. We built out timesheets. That was interesting. I never thought that we would be building out timesheets in our platform, but we did. So so the reason why we built out the timesheets, we have interesting set of customers, from small startups to like some mid-size, and we also have consulting companies that do like offshore development and onshore development. And one of the problems they immediately said is they need to track time of their consultants so they can bill for this. This isn't for the agile process. It's simply how to operate the business. And so, a lot of them came from the world of Jira and signed up for tempo timesheets. And we actually chuckle with these customers because they're like, hey, why am I paying double of what I pay for Jira license just to get the timesheets integrated into Jira? And I said, well, that's the fun part about Jira plugins in the marketplace. You'll pay anything extra for what you want to use. But essentially we said, okay, well, we understand your problem. And because we can clearly see what everybody worked on throughout the past month or the week or whatever the data, we can easily produce that. So we've developed that functionality. Works really smooth, approval models, and we're continuing to explore that option because now the bigger need is, hey, now that we have timesheets, it's really painful for us to do invoices. Like, okay, that makes sense if we have this. Now I'm having conversations with other people and they're like, okay, well, if you have timesheets and you have invoices, it's kind of similar to the way that you do financial budgets. I'm like, okay, I hear you. So basically people are constantly giving me feedback about things that are missing in the tooling they use. And, so we keep on evolving. But, I still find that analytics is the most critical thing.
Okay.
Because the analytics gives us the ability of continuing to provide the data into the AI, with which we can create a lot of very cool functionality. And this is where I'm going to stop because a lot of it is stealthy right now. I don't want to release it before we have it, but it's, think of assistant for any level in project management. Scrum Master assistant, engineering manager assistant, PM assistant. With the level of data that we have, all of these things now become possible. And I think that's what's truly shaping up to be our unique, uniqueness in our product and sort of the base of the product. Because we didn't start out with a CRM-like project management tool with all configurations. We started out, this is the problem we're trying to solve. We're very narrow on what it is, and we're designed it without configurations. So we just want people to sign up and get a quality development process out of the box. And that's been kind of like our mission. So we've solidified on what we're doing now. We found our target. But yeah, it's been a fun adventure.
So it's coming full cycle now from how people get funded to execute certain projects when you're talking about those consultants, right, or customers in general. So you have to manage through your development process and then timesheets and billing and everything in one place, essentially. And also analytics kind of help you to be on target and deliver on your promises. And then also,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. For the, like, if you're running a consulting organization, delivering on time is one of the most critical things that you need to do. And you can't
right.
tell them, hey, we're just gonna spin cycles and sprints, and you drive. Well, no, that's why we hired you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the challenges are interesting, but we're not actually starting with the funding. We're kind of just counting the funding after the fact.
Yeah.
So like you can pull like monthly reports and understand, okay, well, this is my investment. Um, or in the case of consulting companies, they can calculate their margins and figure out what they're earning, what they're spending, and have a very detailed breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they get in funding for something, they keep in mind those numbers. And they use the tool and months over months, they can see the projections and forecasts, like you explained. They can somehow say whether they're going to be on target or not, even though they don't have those numbers in. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we started with the concept of everything in one platform,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have your backlogs, teams, roadmaps, goals, milestones, story poker tools, retrospective tools. All of that is embedded in one platform. Then obviously now it's like this timesheet component.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these are not plugins, or these are not things that, you can turn it on or off. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the financial data, right? Obviously, and that's all great, but there's other components that you still need. For example, building out test cases right there. I mean, why are we using different test case tools? Road mapping tools. There are project management systems that offer horrible roadmaps. Jira. So you have to actually buy it. Like Jira, for example, if you want to do goals, you have to buy three. If you want to do roadmap, goals, and manage your teams, you have to buy three products. Three products. They actually tell you when you're trying to turn it on, like, hey, please sign up here. I don't get it. I mean, yes, I understand it's an enterprise product and it wants to charge money for every feature, but this is not difficult. This is relatively easy, and without it, the system is just a task tracker. Nobody
Yeah,
needs
that's
a
what it
task
is.
tracker now, right? You want the task tracker, sign up for Trello, and if you're running a product and you're still using Trello and you have multiple teams, oh my God, good luck to you.
Well, believe it or not, they actually started as their in-house development task management system, and then they showed it to somebody, and somebody liked it, and they said, "Okay, maybe we should market it now and sell to other people." That's how they started years ago. So
Yeah, yeah, and they started small. They
yeah,
started with small, rapidly moving companies. They didn't go big, and they got lucky in the fact that all those small, rapidly growing companies grew huge.
hmm
So that's another thing that kind of helped them along the way. They didn't really sell into the enterprises; they sold to the small and mid market, and then
hmm
just happened that things flourished. And then from there on, once they got big enough, they could compete with the enterprises. And I kind of feel that we follow in the same trajectory. I think, this is probably my biggest beef, I think, with the industry, that there's just not enough interest in certain organizations in exploring better ways of working. It's kind of like the status quo is good enough, even though everybody knows we're still running late, we're not hitting our targets, we're we don't have the budgets, our budgets are shrinking, we need to do more with less, and yet they still expect to operate the same way, and their magical saving grace is AI.
yeah,
And listen, yesterday I decided to try to generate a PowerPoint presentation. Okay. an absolutely new product deck that I just wanted to build from our website. We have a new website. Why not? All the information is there. Just give me something nice and clean. I used about 10 AI tools to generate that. I got junk in all of them. I mean, one of them was constantly having a first slide that was called consent. Because on the website, when you access the website, the first thing that pops up is the consent form. So one of them converted the language, like mid generation, converted the language to Chinese. How did that do that? I don't know. I asked it to convert it back to English. Another one created PowerPoint that was just basically, look, it looked nice. It had a pretty structure, but the data inside and the verbs used and what it pulled out, totally worthless. So I think, if we're expecting AI to be the saving grace of product, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then something I wanted to come back to your product and ask is, how did your customer base grow over the last year? And also, have you seen any more feedback coming from them? Like, and are they asking pretty much for the same things, or are they asking for like customization to their particular case? How you deal with all of that?
So we've had, for the most part, the easiest conversions are always with customers that are small, right? I mean, we're talking 1-2 teams, not bigger. The challenge with other companies comes in the form of, hey, we are so tightly integrated with our framework. We need all of these bells and whistles to make it work. And in reality, you don't. But obviously, people have a big bias and they're like, scared to try a different way. So for that reason, one of the things we've actually done is we've built out Jira import and bidirectional sync. So like for customers that use Jira, they can just import everything. Bidirectional sync syncs everything in both sides. So if you're having any kind of automation dropping things on the team's plate, it'll pick it up right away and it's going to be available in Project Simple. And it works great. It's also challenging for others because if they've customized their Jira instances in a crazy way, well, it's going to take us a crazy way to try to map everything. So it's not just going to be out of the box. But if you just use it as is, it's really easy. If you haven't gone wild with customizations, then it just maps nicely and works great. So we try to accelerate it. But we still had instances where the customers are like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! You're solving all the problems that we encounter, but we can't move." I'm like, "Okay, why not?" Well, we have this other flow that's controlled by this customer service other thing, and until you guys can support customer service workflow, we won't be able to move because we need everything together. Solvable problems. We have API. You can call out to us, but I guess it's the comfort level of what people want. And we understand it's the ecosystem, right? People are used to integration, but then I think about all these products that are becoming outdated. That's the way they still hold their strength on the market. They are a big mousetrap with integrations, plugins, with all of these things, and that makes it very difficult to change, which I understand. I understand it's a business problem. But as one mentor told me in my very first startup, some will, some won't. So what? Right?
Right.
If you're on a mission...
you just gotta find people who will. So
yeah, if you're on a mission, I mean, you can't be shy. You're gonna have some successes. You're gonna have some failures. Like for example, we've the first large customer we tried to implement, we failed miserably. Okay, and this is probably a bad thing to say in a podcast, but hey, I'm going to talk about it anyway. So we failed because our system is designed to detect errors, risks, problems. And here we were asked to work with a team where, unfortunately, the engineering manager just didn't do a good job managing that team. We could see it with the data. There were alerts constantly fired. We could see with the way that the team was working that they weren't really they weren't coherently working on a goal. They were just all over the place. We're talking all of the anti-patterns that we talk about in Agile. Pre-assigning work for the entire sprint. So the concept of flow is gone. One person works on the entire backlog item. So even there's no swarming of the team towards getting one priority item done. Ignoring all of the bug metrics and water lines, right? Like when you're accruing too many bugs, you're supposed to take action and close some of them. Totally ignoring. And it was just all over the place. And we could see it over the course of 4 sprints, like these alerts just keep on accruing. So obviously that exposed the dysfunction inside of the team.
Yeah.
So we failed that pilot for a very specific reason, that it became a reflection on the manager of that team that they weren't doing a good job. And that's when I knew we were on the right track, because we want to help the teams align. And I understand when people want to do certain things differently, but the results speak for themselves. There's a reason why the community in Agile is so strong, because we know the things that work and we know the things that don't. We've picked up so much knowledge over the years. We can immediately detect when what we're implementing is an anti-pattern that creates a wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some organizations are just not a great fit, and it's understood. So I divide the market into not early adopters and prime and then late adopters. I divide it into people that think positively and want to improve, and then everybody else that's in the status quo.
Yeah, that's very interesting because that really demonstrates that you really need to use the tool to kind of help you with good behaviors and with discipline. And good tool doesn't mean that you're going to fix all your problems and all your processes, right?
Not at
Because
all.
you have to go like with both ways. You have to take a good tool that will really help you streamline your process and work, and also change your behavior and actually do it. That clearly demonstrates that, and it goes for everything you're gonna start doing. Yeah, that's a very good example to tell people about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like integrating AI. Let's say we've integrated AI in a wrong workflow. Well, we just completely halted the way we function. Or we implemented it in the right way, in the right workflow, and it drives incredible value.
Mm-hmm.
So the right application is there. And you can function differently as a team, but as long as the structure stays the same, you protect the visibility of what you're instrumenting and the benefits, or maybe not benefit. What's the opposite of benefits? Deterioration of the process looks like. Because we've designed it in such a way that all the metrics are always in front of you. Glints, small glints on the screen with the corner of your eye is enough to detect when things are wrong, or at least ask, this doesn't really make sense, and come to the team with an intelligent question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we want to function, because if we are to eliminate the micromanagement, we have to let the teams go. But we still want the ability to trust but verify.
Yeah.
Not in the big brother effect, but more like, hey guys, we've observed this. How can we help you?
But this is the same. This is always funny because I keep saying to people, you wouldn't start your car and drive on the highway 80 miles an hour or whatever, drive safe with a speed limit. I'm just giving an example, without having dashboard of indicating your speed, your the temperature, the whatever else other things that the dashboard shows you, right? Same thing with projects. People invest a lot of money in all this work, and then they just blindly jump in and start executing left and right and doing all kinds of things without proper planning, without monitoring, without looking at the data or any of that sort. And it always fascinates me. Like, this is crazy. Like, you would not drive your car or fly an airplane without dashboard with all these indicators. That's just crazy.
The previous podcast we did, I talked about discipline, like Agile
Mm-hmm.
being a discipline. And I still believe it. It's relevant. I mean, that's what it's all about. I want to let the teams function on their own. I want to be a helper to them, but I don't need to monitor them every day. I don't need to nag them to update the status. I don't need to drag them into too many meetings than I have to, because those are all the problems that everybody talks about. Read on LinkedIn. People hate it. So if they hate it, it creates a bad sentiment. Bad sentiment kills productivity. It forces micromanagement. So we have to reverse it. So when people say the word culture, I go, prove it. What culture? Show me your culture. Because your culture is not your lunches, paid lunches, or the kumbaya moments. The culture is how you operate as a team. I make the analogies with sports all the time. You can see when the team is coherent and when there's a lot of camaraderie and when things just happen. You just put these guys together, boom, championship won, right? You're obviously not seeing the hard work that happens under the cover, but that's the way like we perceive it as the fans or the viewers. Meanwhile, you could also see a team that struggles. Lack of passing. They don't, they don't have the same dynamic. They don't high five each other in the same way. There's all these, you could see frustration, and that shows. And it's the same way if you're ready to take a look at it.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of mentioned the next steps for you was this AI agents, or however you want to call them, assistants. Is there anything else? You don't have to mention specifics since it's all in the pipeline, but is anything exciting coming, innovative with Project Simple?
Well, the Project Simple itself is innovative. Out of the box process that does everything without configuration and gives you maximum value for multi-team projects and multi-project teams. Because if you're done one piece of work, you still have to maintain it while somebody says do the other, and you have to do all this work in one sprint. Show me a platform that does that now. It doesn't exist. People copy, pull, they lose, the backlogs get all mismangled. I mean, it becomes a mess. So we've solved that problem too. But I think our innovations are not like this huge innovation. We're not going to create a new Agile, right?
Yeah.
But what we will do is we will sort of tighten up on the loose ends that exist. Like the other day, for example, I took my daughter to play tennis. And, she's okay in tennis. She's getting better and better. But then after she was done, she was like, hey, can I do a lap? And he's like, yeah, sure, go do a lap. And so she started running around the court. And she's a perfect runner. She doesn't have any loose ends, nothing flapping, like a perfect runner. Tennis player, amateur at best, right? but a runner would be perfect, right? So I think our system, our innovations are all about tightening it up, and by bringing everything together, it makes it possible, as opposed to constantly investing into new process, new change, new dashboard, new model, new expectations. This multi-layer cake of expectations, managing a project. Like, you have to look at this dashboard and then at this dashboard and then extract the data and put it together and then generate this report, that report. This needs to stop. This is garbage. We've long passed the document as the source, like the memo, right, as the source of our status updates or progress reports, right? We're not a traditional project management. We want to show where we're moving to give comfort level visibility that we're making progress. We want to align future expectations, right? So that other teams that depend on us, like marketing or sales, can have a understanding of their own timelines, right? But what we don't want to do is we don't want to overburden ourselves. Because we're software developers, QA, we're product people. We're not, sales or marketing, and we're not like operating the entire business. So we just want to get the stuff done that's in front of us. And, there's only one way to provide that freedom: get rid of the extra burden.
That's also a good approach to stay unique and innovative, right? Just pick one simple workflow or process and double down on it. And if it works, why change it, right? You have a bunch of people who using it and they're actually producing good results. You use it yourself in your shop. So that's a good indication that if people on board, they will buy it and they will use it. So
I'll give you an example. This one is interesting. Example of us drinking our own champagne,
mm-hmm.
right? So we have a configuration setting at the project level where you basically identify the severity of the support cases that must go through 5 whys postmortem
Mm-hmm.
before you can even attempt to mark it as done. Like, let's meet as a team, let's discuss the postmortem, let's have that conversation, let's learn the lessons so that we can prevent it in the future, and then we can mark this backlog item done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As opposed to the traditional process where somebody's going to find the time on the calendar 3 weeks from after the support case was closed, or 2 weeks, and do the conversation then, but nobody cares anymore because the problem is no longer a problem.
Yeah.
Right? So we lost the opportunity to learn. So we have this setting. And I would frequently start asking a question to the team whenever certain bugs came up. It's like, hey, what was causing this? What caused this bug? Like, what's the underlying reason for this bug? I thought we fixed this before or something similar before, right? Because as a product, you're busy, you're doing a lot of things and you can't remember all the time. And so this led to us adding, 5 whys as a definition of done on the bug level. A very simple change. But
Mm-hmm.
now you can choose which bug you want to collect feedback on. Right?
Yeah.
Common sense stuff, very easy to do, but tremendous value because I don't have to go and hunt why. Right? A simple ticker. Yep, this is required. Boom. People can't mark it as done unless they fill it in, and it works great.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because sometimes it happens, and I work for government organization, and sometimes when something happens with some issue happens or some customer support comes in certain situations, we have to fill out internally those reports to figure out how to prevent it from happening for various reasons. And we have this formal process of postmortem, filling out paperwork, explaining what happened, lessons learned, and things like that. It could take a couple of meetings to complete, but some features like that very beneficial in most cases when some bugs happen, especially if something repeatedly happens. I agree. And especially if it's a setting, I mean, disable if you don't like it.
But let's think bigger. Let's imagine that we're running a product and we have like 10 teams on it. Okay. And we're executing these postmortems, 5 whys as part of your definition of done inside the platform, not outside into some kind of a document nobody ever sees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we have AI. Can we ask AI to figure out where our biggest problems are?
Mm.
Can AI automatically look at that stuff and bubble up the information and be like, hey, Alex,
Mm-hmm.
we have a problem. The 5 whys always point to this issue. Maybe the team needs training here or something else. Yes, it can. And that's ultimately what AI is for. It can detect data and it can trigger up and bubble up information. What's happening at the team level, right? I mean, tell me a Scrum Master that every sprint wants to spend 3 days pulling all the metrics manually, right?
Yeah.
Scrum Masters don't want to do that, right? And they shouldn't. They shouldn't be part of their job. They want to have a dashboard they can go to and conveniently pull the information. But what if that Scrum Master gets a notification from the system that go, hey, Vit, I've detected that the blocked cycle time keeps increasing over the past 3 sprints. Maybe that's something we should do. Or it came up and said, hey, the PM review is taking too long. Takes 2 days for somebody to get back to the team. So they're stuck. And what happens when people are stuck? They start something new.
Yeah.
And when something new starts, what happens? Well, we pick up more work. And when we pick up more work, what happens? We have too much work in progress. And if we have too much work in progress, we're getting real slow. We're not getting things done, right?
Yeah.
Like another thing that we've uncovered was something very interesting. So, you know how people run Scrum sometimes, right? So there's this urgent backlog item that came through, and the team is voluntold,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Volunteered to pick it up. So they drag it into the existing sprint that already started, because who's going to tell, the boss no? And immediately the conversation starts. Well, what do? We now have more work than we can handle. Well, somebody goes and bumps some work off,
Yeah.
right? We created the revolving door policy, right? We always swap things out. Yeah, they're about the same, so it's fine. No, it's not fine. You should really stick with your guns. If priorities change, just bring it in. Don't swap anything out, because you want to make it clear of what was remaining, and the indicator is something else was added. You don't need to remove it. So it's not, don't try to shoehorn the sprint into a sprint, right? But people still do.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are instances where somebody starts works on it a little bit, and also bumps it off the sprint for whatever reason. Oh, we made a decision. We're not going to continue with this. There is no terminology that talks about it. It's not a carry forward. I'm sorry, it's not a carry over. So we called it carry forward.
Yeah.
And now we actually measure carry forward. I actually produced an article on Medium about, hey, you've heard of carryover, but have you heard of carry forward? Carry forward means you started something, you've invested time into it, you didn't get to the done, and you just moved it back to be completed sometime later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that carry forward, that just became waste.
That's right.
Right? So we always learn from these types of experience, and it's been really rewarding. I think whether we end up being utterly successful or just somewhere in the middle, or maybe not at all, who knows? But it's a lot of experience learned.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, all these things, all these use cases that you mentioned, it's usually done manually. Somebody have to remember, take notes, and it's really the jobs of the Scrum Masters who should take care of this and who should monitor it. If they have a tool that helps them with that's just great. With automated alerts, notifications, flags, and things like that. So yeah. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit to
Sure.
business side, if you will. What was the biggest challenge in growing your project Simple to where you are right now in the last year? I mean.
Good question. I think the main one was trying to figure out what is the most appropriate contact point of who to talk to, and who would be the most excited about what we're doing.
Mm.
Because there are many, and I've spent a lot of times with senior leaders, and I wish a lot more senior leaders would be open-minded, but a lot of them are like, hey, I don't really use Jira or ClickUp, Monday, not my problem. We buy it for our teams, and we've long time ago established a standard across our organization, and everybody uses the same thing. And something silly that's just, it kind of is too high at the point to say, hey, listen, this isn't working for us. But nobody's willing to challenge that governance. And it's kind of like that status quo that's been dead in the point. So that's the biggest challenge. And I wish I could say that we solved it, but we didn't. It's a problem that exists internally. And I understand. Everybody is sort of shell-shocked by their last project management platform switch. Companies that went from Jira to ClickUp, from ClickUp to Asana, from Asana back to Jira, or whatever else. Every time they try, it's such a huge undertaking, so much risk, that I think a lot of companies are just scared.
Yeah.
And they also don't understand the value they will get from it. So the only value they try to compare is dollars to dollars. So we still have ways to prove that our approach, at least to the larger companies that experience this, that our approach is superior. even though our metrics say they are, and I can explain the approach, I can talk to the teams, bring examples, but I think it's still something new, and that's okay because we're growing fast is not for every business. Certain business will take time, especially for project management software business, because there's very few that don't have the tools internally.
Mm-hmm.
There's still companies out there that operate with Excel, yes, but there's very few that don't try something. And because it's sort of a space that people think they already understand. So approaching it from a different perspective, it's harder to explain. And
Yeah.
I've heard time and time again, folks are like, wait, but you're just like everybody else. I go, no. Here's the difference. So I think the differentiation is still a big factor, and that status quo doesn't help either. But every time I've seen, I've offered a demo and people took a look at it, a lot of them are like, whoa, that's not what I expected. It's really awesome. And that's sort of the sentiment.
Yeah.
Whether somebody chooses to go to the next step is kind of like, depends on their org.
Yeah.
But, it's constantly a challenge. And there are businesses that, won't grow really fast because of, such a such market. But that's okay. We're, in a way, I compare us to like Figma or Notion, right? Both of these platforms, it took them 3+ years to start like rapidly growing, because both of them found that the barrier in terms of functionality is pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all those platforms were built over the course of 20 years.
Yeah.
How can we, as somebody new, expect to do more with less in a shorter period of time? So far, we've been extremely fast in comparison, but it's still, not 20 years make up in a year fast.
Right. Yeah, it's very typical problem with big organizations, especially. I just had this agile coaching camp a couple weeks ago, or last weekend maybe, or a couple weekends ago. And even coaches, when they go to organizations and try to do some implement some change, right, based on the need, like executives sitting there and saying our teams don't do good job, they deliver everything late, or whatever the issue is, and they bring these coaches, and coaches start pointing out all these issues, and then they say, well, we actually don't need you because you just identify a whole bunch of issues for us, so thank you very much, we'll move on. That's what happens. So they want to fix the issues, but they don't really want to listen and change their behaviors and invest in this. And I think similar thing with tools happening. They just used to it, and they know they have to retrain people, they have to do a bunch of different changes and things like that, and they just care about it.
Well, I started to speak a different language lately, and I wrote an article, what does Atlassian doesn't tell you about Jira? Okay. And the article basically lists 12 points of what, of the problem of using tools like Jira. Mm-hmm. And, you've been to all those Agile conferences, everybody says no Jira, and, the whole Agile community is kind of split on it. There's a lot of people that think you should go away from it, and it's responsible for a lot of dysfunction. But that aside, I wrote basically an article that says, hey, when you're buying a license from Jira, you're paying for Jira. Then you are basically paying for somebody to come in and configure it, or you're hiring people to constantly configure it.
Yep.
And manage it, maintain it. Every team has its own individual development process. So now you're trying to have everybody conform, but you can't conform if you can't scale if you can't have the process conform across multiple teams, because scaling by definition means you have something repeatable that you can multiply. Right. Mm-hmm. Right? So you want to multiply the good, not the bad. And if you're just multiplying people, but they all operate differently, well, you're not really scaling. You're just hiring. So you're going to need that. When you do that, you're also going to need plugins, because things are not going to work out of the box. And Jira doesn't give you a roadmap, or you'll buy a roadmap from Jira. It doesn't give you goals, you'll buy that from Jira. Jira has a lot of metrics. It's questionable because people don't update the statuses, so their metrics are always off. And the metrics out of the box are really poor, but let's say they have them. But you can't pull them out. You can't present them in a nice visual way that you could actually do stuff. So people buy, Jellyfish, Linear B, all kinds of metric tools. Then across multiple teams in Jira, they don't understand the progress. They can't do budgets. They can't do CapEx, OpEx. What do people do? They use BI, export all of this stuff out of Jira, crunch it through BI once every month, get some kind of magic numbers, 78% complete, and here's our budget,
Yeah.
and those are the two data points. That's additional money that people spend. Now, once you roll out all of these things, your technical stack expenses just go sky high, right? So you're, instead of, a single license, you're just paying for all of this tooling. And most of this tooling creates its own individual dashboards, its own logins, and you have one person or several people that are operating, looking at all this data in 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
That's not really a smooth process, right? Now, once you put it together, you take a look at all the micromanagement that such environment creates, right? And micromanagement is responsible for like 50% overhead, right? So up 20 to 50 if you take a look at the reporting. That's huge. That's a huge downturn. And that's instrumented by the tool. And so when you compound all of that, it costs you so much more than originally. You're buying all these tools that you have to use. You're managing tools. You're hiring people to just manage the actual tools themselves, which are non-critical. They're just projects. I mean, and you're not even managing. You don't have to keep the runtime on them, right? You're not managing the technical aspect. You're managing how the checkboxes and fields operate, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing like administration at best, but you need people that actually know how to administer, because one small change could take you weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also still doesn't solve the problem of teams not operating to their top ability. So why not look at that? Because I think that's a huge cost. But that's unfortunately, the state of the state of our industry today.
Yeah, well, that's like your value proposition right there, to educate organizations on it, right, and show them you have this much overhead. You're actually hiring extra people to do this work. You are paying extra money to do this whole thing. If you just simplify this little administrative fees to run your development teams, you can relocate those money to some other, you can hire more developers actually do job, rather than hire administrators to administer all these tools and write your queries for BI tools that you could get for free if you pick the right tool. So,
but also organizations are constantly asking their people to do more with less. Yeah. Hey, you're PM. That's great. Could you please take another project on? Right? We've seen it all of that. You're a Scrum Master. I mean, you can't be a Scrum Master for one team. That means you're twiddling your thumbs, right? You got to have like 3 teams.
Yeah.
Right? You've seen this all the time, right? And people are like, well, no, I can barely manage 2. There's enough work there. So if in that environment where we're asked to do more with less, we need something that we don't have to micromanage.
Yeah.
And that's where, I try to educate that that's your opportunity. And listen, it's kind of an exciting time, exciting space. We're getting traction, which is great. But also we have to be careful, right? A startup is a startup is a startup. There are things, unfortunately, that we won't be able to handle.
Yeah.
Until we grow a little bit, let's say a 10,000 engineer company comes to us and says, hey, we want to use you now. The first thing I'm going to do is just jump off the bridge, I think, because, there's not a way that we as a small company can, integrate full 10,000, engineers on the platform. Not that the system can't handle it. It can. It's just, for us to train everybody, to onboard, to understand, to kind of go through all that process, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. If that customer comes, they might as well just buy us. And turn our product into their enterprise offering. I think that's
That's another venue, yes.
that's another way to grow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, last question. We're coming to an end. If you were to start all over again, would you take different steps in the beginning to build Project Simple?
Yes. Yes. So we were developing for about a year before we started drinking our own champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And I was constantly delaying, saying, well, wait, we're not going to switch yet. We're not going to switch yet. We're not going to switch yet. I think not starting earlier made it a lot harder to begin. Because as a new system, you always have things that you haven't ironed out yet.
Yeah.
It's one thing when you develop perfect UI UX. It's another thing when you start using it and you're like, this is awkward. So the perfecting the experience, the simplification, did change. And also, stabilization, so that the system, because you're ironing out workflows you've never touched before, exploring different things. So I think starting out earlier would have been better. I think that's something that I would definitely do a little bit different. If I could, I would start as soon as possible. But just like I said, the barrier of functionality needs to be there to start.
Right.
Otherwise, you can't do anything. You just feel like you're being held back. The other thing that I would probably do differently, I think this is more of like the product angle. The order of how we've built different things, I think it could have been a little tighter, right? Because I kind of felt that certain instances I went to a little bit more perfection rather than just getting the minimal value or just user value, but with, maybe not the bells and whistles. But on the other hand, I don't know if we followed a different way that we would end up in the same point we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we learned from those experiences, we solved the pains that way, and it led us to the different type of thinking. I think placing bets is good. On the other hand, my personal motto in startups has always been, do not give your customers and prospects the reason not to do business with you. Because there are many reasons not to do business with you. Hey, what we have is good enough. Hey, we don't, it sounds like the same. You can make a million excuses why something is never going to work or why it's not a fit for you. But my personal philosophy in products, do not give your customers a reason not to. If you don't, like, a bug that pops up in a demo is a reason not to, right? So if you don't provide the reason not to, then chances of success are great. Mm-hmm. But any reason that would come up is a reason to stop everything. And that's just my product thinking and experience as an entrepreneur. Worked for me in the past, perfecting the flow, having like really lightweight design, making sure things work real fast and in quality. That always earned a great reputation. And, if for anybody looking to build their own product, I think the experience today is no longer an expectation. It's now the ultimate value. Mm-hmm. Because we are not in the business of creating anything completely new. We build new experiences within the frameworks and solutions that we already have. Very few can innovate totally different. I think for the most part, we adapt out of different disciplines. That would be kind of the biggest advice to me when I was starting out all over again.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think there is this school of thought that you have to be embarrassed with your first version when you release it, right? And then another school of thought is like, no, you have to make it a little bit more usable and perfect almost. So at least it doesn't crash that frequently when people try to use it.
I get it. I think the quote is a little bit different. I think the quote is, if you've never been embarrassed, you've never worked in the startup. When you show your product, I don't think you want to be coming in to demonstrate your product with embarrassment.
Yeah,
right.
That's not the goal. That's not the goal.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like being asked certain questions you're not ready for, or having some functionality not working in a demo. That's the embarrassment we're talking about. But yeah, you're right. You take risks, you take bets, you learn from it. Certain things will go well, other things you have to learn from. And that's okay, as long as you put yourself out there and just do the best you can.
Right. All right. On this optimistic note, I think we can wrap up. Thank you very much for your time. It was nice talking to you and learning what you guys built there, and also a few lessons on how you build in your startup and how you innovate and things like that. So that's great. Always great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, Vit. Thanks for the invitation. It's been great.
Yeah. Okay. We'll wait another 12 months and maybe we'll do another one.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Alex. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.